Are you guys all good to go? Do you need a...
We wait 1 minute?
Yeah, I was going to say I'll give you a minute to join in the fun. What do you reckon? It's going to rain? No, that's right. Yeah, sure, no problem. I was going to say.
Sorry guys, thank you. Is it alright there, Mike?
No, I'll stand to the one side and give you guys a minute to...
I was freaking out a bit when I saw you standing right there.
Yeah, that's alright.
Do you want me to check that, Mike? Check.
You get the prize.
Hey?
You get the prize.
Okay, everybody good now? Okay. All right, kia ora everyone. I'm happy to go straight to questions.
What do you make?
Nicola Willis says the government plans to reduce spending by billions of dollars. How concerned are you with what will be cut?
I think New Zealanders are now seeing the true price of tax cuts. In the last budget, in last year's budget, in order to deliver tax cuts, Nicola Willis borrowed an additional $12 billion. Now she's cutting government spending even further. National promised tax cuts on the basis that no cuts to public services were going to be required. That's simply not true.
Yeah, like it's dropping by more than $1 billion. What do you sort of make of it?
I think New Zealanders can see every day the consequences of the government's decisions to prioritise tax cuts and spending cuts over investing in the public services that New Zealanders rely on. We see our health system descending into crisis. We see record numbers of New Zealanders giving up and leaving the country, and this government are going to make all of those problems worse.
Why do you think the government is talking up cutting operating allowance by $1 billion when it's such a small piece of the pie overall?
Ultimately, this is a government that's already run out of ideas after only a year and a half in government. They have no solutions to the challenges facing New Zealand. They have no vision for the future. We can't cut our way to greater prosperity. We can't cut the health system further. We can't cut the education system further. Ultimately, we're robbing future generations when we do the sorts of things that Nicola Willis is doing.
What do you make of no new funding for government departments and agencies?
Ultimately, Nicola Willis is saying to future generations of New Zealanders, give up, leave the country, you're going to be better off living somewhere else.
So this operational allowance is below what Hayfield stated was pre-committed spending. What do you make of that?
Well, ultimately it means more savage cuts to other public services. The government already pre-committed a significant amount of this year's budget because they underdid it last time. So their promise around cancer drugs, for example, they didn't fund it in last year's budget, so they funded it out of this year's budget. Now they've already pre-committed more in this year's budget than they're going to actually be delivering. That can only mean one thing: more borrowing and more public service cuts.
Nicola Willis says it's fantasy land stuff to say the government would be able to spend any more given the high debt payments. You agree?
Ultimately, the government are making the wrong choices. We see increased unemployment, for example, that costs New Zealanders more, and much of that is driven by government decisions. The government could have chosen to keep people in work and we'd be spending less money on unemployment, more money on building infrastructure. They're making the wrong choices.
What impact will this budget have on New Zealanders?
Ultimately, it's going to create further problems for New Zealanders down the track. It's going to cost New Zealand more in the long term. It's going to mean more New Zealanders giving up and leaving the country, and it's going to mean more run-down public services.
Nicola Willis says the government is having to borrow too much money. How much is it borrowing for tax cuts?
Well, the government are borrowing for tax cuts. They borrowed an additional $12 billion in last year's budget in order to fund tax cuts. One of the reasons they have the big structural deficit they have is because they delivered tax cuts that the country simply couldn't afford.
Is this an austerity budget?
This is absolutely an austerity budget. Didn't work for the UK, won't work for New Zealand.
If New Zealand plans to reduce the number of intensive care beds in the new Dunedin hospital from 30 to 20, with room to increase to 40 in the future, that's got clinicians quite worried that it'll mean more delays. And this information was uncovered by local media through the OIA months after the Health Minister announced that the bill would be scaled back in January. What's your response to the Health Minister not revealing the downgrade at the time?
The National Party lied to New Zealanders about the Dunedin hospital rebuild before the election when they said they were going to do the full-scale Dunedin hospital rebuild. They've backtracked on that several times. This is just the latest broken promise when it comes to Dunedin Hospital. And this isn't just Dunedin that's going to be affected by this. The entire lower South Island depends on things like those ICU beds at Dunedin Hospital. I think Dunedin deserves the hospital that the National Party promised them.
Do you have any reflections on Tory whānau, and are you glad to see that Andrew Little has what seems to be a clear path to mayoralty?
Oh, look, Andrew's got my full backing. I think he'll be a great mayor for Wellington. I want to acknowledge Tory whānau. It's a tough gig. Being mayor of Wellington's always a tough gig for whoever takes on that job. And I also do just want to acknowledge the level of personal vilification that she was subjected to. I don't agree with Tory whānau on everything, and there have been plenty of areas where I've disagreed with her, but it's never okay to vilify someone in that way. Women in politics in New Zealand, particularly women from different ethnicities, certainly seem to be subjected to far more personal denigration and abuse than others are, and it's not okay. So as she stands down as mayor and ends her term as mayor, I do want to acknowledge that. What happened there was totally unacceptable.
What do you make of tenancy terminations more than doubling over the past year?
I think it sort of reflects the fact that, the government have said to landlords that you don't have to necessarily do the right thing by your tenants, but also it just reflects the volatile state of the New Zealand economy at the moment.
Are you concerned about where tenants are having to go after their tenancies are terminated?
Well, we're seeing an increase in homelessness in New Zealand. Government policy is one of the things that's driving that. So the government have booted a lot of people out of short-term emergency accommodation. They've celebrated that as a good thing, and yet we've got an increased number of people living rough on the streets. I don't think that's a good thing at all. Cool. All right, quick and easy. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Right, we'll grab our bags and hit the road.